Marshall Pruett podcast, your week in sports cars video edition. This is number 2, Graham. We did our very first. We went for about an hour. I think the edit itself was 59 minutes, 59 seconds. We're not going to do that to folks. Do about 15 minutes. Post the audio for this right away as well. But you just got back from Porsche Night of Champions. I want to learn about that. We spent a lot of time in the last episode talking about Porsche in general. You got some pretty serious things you're armed with. Also want to say a big thanks to our friends at the justicebrothers.com and torontomotorsports.com for supporting us. Now that you have spoken to a lot of people, gotten real info at this event, 2026. Speak to me like I'm a 5-year-old, which is a little bit smarter than I actually am. What's going on? What's real?
As things stand today, what we are briefed at the Night of Champions is there will be no factory-blessed hypercars, which means we can have no privateer hypercars. We were told specifically by multiple communications officers at that night, that is where things stand. That's not a position that is agreed with by at least one person who was in that room, Christian Reed, who says that negotiations are still underway. We're still underway.
Head of Proton.
Indeed. And the assumption is that if this is going to happen, then it would have to be a consortium involving Proton, who have 2 cars, who had 1 entry, but would need assistance to field a second, and Porsche's approval to have that nominated as the manufacturer-nominated team. That was one part of it. So we're already into a situation where elements within Porsche Motorsport are telling a very different story to other elements in that room. For me, though, the more extraordinary and potentially the more problematic in the longer term was what I can only describe as being a dramatic shift in the narrative. What do I mean by that? In the immediate aftermath of Porsche announcing their departure from the WEC from next season, we were being briefed and were repeatedly briefed that the principal reason behind this is because of the current commercial position for the company.
And to be clear, this is departing as a factory from hypercar, top class with their LMDH machinery. In LMGT3, those are still eligible to run, but they're leaving as a factory from the top class.
Well, we're coming to
and that has huge ramifications.
It does. It has ramifications, not just for the fact that Porsche will not be in the top tier as a factory team. It means because there's no homologated factory entries that Christian Reed's Proton car cannot be entered. And it also means that the championship-winning car from IMSA, Roger Penske, the Porsche Penske Motorsport car, will not be allowed to enter the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So that's the ramifications immediately. The really extraordinary piece of this, though, and I cannot overemphasize the scale of problem that Porsche corporately are currently in. To give you a number that's now out there, because these numbers came after the withdrawal, a couple of 3 weeks after the withdrawal, first 3 quarters of this year, profit for Porsche Group down by 99.6%. 99.6%. Okay, 4 billion down to 40 million. Not great. And with other matters that they certainly know are going to give them further issues, including price guarantees given on the purchase price of Porsche cars ahead of the tariff underway. So they've got major trading issues. And it's in that context, and to be clear, that level of briefing was going on up to and including, just want to be sure about the weekends here, 10 days face-to-face before this event. We then got to the stage where 3 separate speeches were made from the stage at the Night of Champions, where pretty squarely the blame, the reasoning behind the withdrawal was given for sporting reasons. BOP was what was basically chucked in there. It was hard to take finishing second after a perfect race for the number 6 car at Le Mans, was mentioned more than once. But BOP was given very squarely by more than one senior member of Porsche management as the public reasoning for that group, for that crowd, for that audience, for the withdrawal.
How'd that land with you?
I'm just not buying it, is the straight and honest answer. It certainly doesn't sit well, let's use the word sporting, in a situation where they're staying on in IMSA, where IMSA did make a massive change to the BOP, well, it's about a third of the way through the season, after they were briefing that mistakes were made in their running of the balance of performance, and in this case in Porsche's favour, I'm sorry, but that's just not a very sporting take on this. I'm completely bamboozled by having been directly briefed that Porsche cannot be seen to be funding effectively a privateer effort in their own name against a position where the whole point of doing this was to save money. Those words, pretty much those words, were delivered directly to me by a very senior source. And then 2
So
days,
pulling out
hang on,
of the top class
yep,
hypercar to save money, but if we're then backdoor funding a privateer, then again, if
that
that becomes known or visible, we're effectively destabilizing our argument for leaving.
exactly that. And that was the direct one-on-one briefing at my request from someone in a position to be able to do that. Okay, not a lackey, not a third or fourth party, someone directly in the management chain. Less than 2 days later than that. Now, bear in mind the figure that I believe would be required for a second car to add to the funding that would already be in place for Proton's first car is a pretty low end 8-figure euro sum. 10
10,
plus.
12 million, something in that
Yes.
range.
Less than 48 hours later, Porsche announce out of nowhere they're going to fund for 26-27 a second Formula E team. Cost cap for a Formula E team, 25 million euros. Now, okay, that's their choice. That is their narrative. Their narrative has been about this 3-platform strategy, EV in Formula E, ICE engines, internal combustion engines in GT, and hybrid in GTP in IMSA. But the switch of narrative is, and I'm going to be very as subtle as I can be here, at the very least political in its nature. And this is going to give them a real problem. Not for 2026, where their course is now set, but potentially for 2027. So do we expect them to be asking to come back to the WEC in Hypercar in 2027? Almost certainly not, okay? But they most certainly will be wanting their LMGT3 cars back into the FIWC, where I expect they're going to be this coming season with a new look LMGT3 effort with the now confirmed departure of the Iron Dames. So I think there's going to be 2 new customer-based efforts with Montai there. Let's assume for a moment you're not Marshall Pruett, but you're chairing the selection committee for the FI World Endurance Championship, and you've got incoming Ford and McLaren hypercar efforts putting pressure on the numbers that you've got. What are you going to do? Who's going to be on the chopping block in LMGT3? It isn't going to be AMG. They've got a brand new car coming. It isn't going to be Lexus. They've got a brand new car coming. Maybe a Toyota, maybe a Lexus. If I'm correct here, and that is received as badly as I think it's going to be at Le Mans, that shifted narrative at their expense, if you like, this could leave the risk that Porsche's, by then, 76-year uninterrupted history at Le Mans could come to an end in 2027.
You've explained everything exquisitely, Graham. I might be more confused, not because of your words, but trying to make sense of things. I realize this is a very basic observation. I'm sure everyone's already made it. But from the outside, it sounds like, hey, budget-wise, we're able to procure more, get buy-off internally within Porsche, the automobile side, to do more electric racing in open wheel. Do we have a budget to expand? Well, what if we were to kill the FIWC hypercar program and shift that budget over here? So, in terms of internal value, knowing that, again, potentially you could say, well, IMSA back-to-back GTP champions with the hybrid 963. That's succeeding well.
Yeah.
We have the Formula E program. Again, incredible success there, champion level, etc. Do we go further into that, and do we basically just rob from half of our global sports car program with prototypes to fund the expansion into more Formula E. So from the outside, it sounds like that could be the case. Need to leave off here in a moment, move into our final topic. The portion you mentioned, depending on where things could be here, 2027, Ford coming in, McLaren, if Porsche's no longer involved as a factory effort, does the WEC say they're still welcome in LMGT3 if that's oversubscribed? Again, we don't know where all this is going to lead. But just say this. This is a human-made problem. This isn't something that I look to Porsche and say, this is all on you. This is the FIWC rewrote their rules here very recently to say to participate, you must have a two-car factory hypercar effort. That is the magic ticket. Sign up for that. Pay us to do that. Big marketing involvement as well. That opens the door for official participation. By that change, Lamborghini said, we can't afford to do that. We're gone. They're out. IMSA is the only place to find them with their GTP car, that SC63 in 2025, even that being a limited program. They're now done. Porsche taking themselves out of hypercar at the factory level has indeed taken the biggest name in sports car racing out of not just the WEC, and I realize Le Mans is around the WEC, but the ACO's 24 Hours of Le Mans. That's the big ticket. That's the biggest thing in the world. Potentially not just Porsche-less there in all capacities in 2027, as you suggest, is a possibility, is frightening. I'm sure they'd love to be there. I'm sure privateers would love to represent Porsche in hypercar, in LMGT3. These are rules that are standing in the way here. Are those rules in the best interest of the sport, of the fans? Is there a lack of money coming their way now with all the manufacturers subscribing in hypercar? Just saying, this seems to be a hardball rule that would make sense if you had limited manufacturers and had to come up with things to keep them in. I just don't know if it fully fits the times. Let's pivot here and close. You did something really fun here, and I'm so jealous. Bob Barrage,
Yeah,
Bob
big
Barrage's
fat
House
Bob.
of Mirth, BBM. Let's close on that. Tell us about your visit, some of the cool things happening there with a particular French mark. I believe, as my English friends always tell me, it should be pronounced Peugeot. I'm kidding. I always get told about the commercials run there in the UK of how to pronounce the name. And I can't do the.
Per,
Uh,
per, as in cat.
n-
Joe, as in.
I've heard Alan McNish pronounce, and it is per Joe. Per Joe? Peugeot?
I've
I'm
heard
not
Alan
sure.
McNish pronounce many things, and I wouldn't recommend any of them
An
to
English
anybody.
speaker who needs subtitles. I love Alan
Let's tell you a
McNish.
little bit about it. So, yeah, Bob Berridge, one of the two Bs in BBM, the other two being Steve Briggs, he was their technical director, he was there, the M being Nick Manassian. They're the three name owners at BBM Sports. And you're absolutely right. Next week, we'll see me on a plane to the Asia Le Mans Series. Next year, we'll see the debut of Hypercar, Pro-Am Hypercars in the Asia Le Mans Series. And the preparation begins now. So the first declared taker, and I can tell you they are not the only takers, are BBM Sport, and it will be under their name with a pair of, completely correct, Peugeot 9X8s. So we were invited along to hear a little bit more about that. There are three of the original Gen 1 cars already on site, the tailless, the wingless Wonder, as we're talking about them. In company, by the way, and you'll see some of the pictures, and the story will run the next 24, 48 hours, of three of the previous batch of Peugeots that BBM took on board and operated, the 908 HDI FAPs and the 90X cars, but three of the V12 cars in the workshop, together with three of the current Peugeots. Here's the bit that nobody knew until we sat down with Bob. It may not be the wingless cars that race. So a lot depends, because there are more cars to come. A significant number, a number I'm not going to reveal, but I can tell you that it's not a small number of
A
Peugeots.
purdy amount of
Yes, indeed.
Peugeots. And are we talking about taking the massive wings off of the 908 HDI FAP LMP1s
I think
and
they'd
strapping
struggle
those
against.
onto the 9X8s? They'd be
It's
popping
no,
wheelies.
I think the key part to it, and the cool part of the story, was talking to Bob and to Steve Briggs about the real issues about getting a rule set correct here. because there's all sorts of things you've got to look into. Number one, it's got to be affordable for Pro-Am drivers, because it's going to be effectively usually the bronze driver that's going to be paying for this. And if you think about the number of people you see in GTP that are there having to monitor the systems, that's not doable. So you need to find some way of taking some of that cost out of hypercar. The second thing is that you need as well to deal with the fact that, in common with IMSA and GTP, WEC and hypercar has really seriously restrictive testing regimes. And what you can't do is to get into a situation where you've effectively got a shadow test team running. So what do you allow them to run in terms of the spec of that car? That's particularly why the Wingless Wonder would be interesting, because, of course, we don't race with that car anymore. The next batch, I'm told, the 2024 spec cars. 2024 spec cars did get some 25 upgrades, but they can be retroactively taken off. So there's a lot still to come in here. There's around what specification of car can you actually run with? What devices or systems will those cars have to run in terms of monitoring that performance? Do they need to run with the torque management of the torque sensors? And further to that, the open question still of whether or not the gentleman driver in the winning car in that class, and I can tell you right now, Marshall, my number for where I think we are today is somewhere between 5 and 7 cars for next season from 3 or possibly 4 different manufacturers. None of the boutique manufacturers involved as far as I'm aware at this stage. Whether or not that bronze driver should be given an automatic invitation in either LMP2 or in LMGT3 to the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2027, because for sure they won't be going in a hypercar.
Graham Goodwin, we almost kept the 15 minutes. Not so bad. It is your official duty on the podcast. Take us home, brother. That's your responsibility.
Oh, well, thanks for joining us again on this video version of the Weekend Sportscast. If you're back for a second time, there's no excuse. We really do look like this. Thanks to all of you for looking in. Thanks to you, MP, for making the time. Thanks, of course, to the Justice Brothers and TorontoMotorsports.com for their continuing efforts in support of this enterprise. We will be with you with the Weekend Sportscast next week.
And we're actually doing them weekly again. So, hey, holy crap. All right. Talk to y'all later.